about self-producing and talking to these amazing producers in the shy Chicago theater community. Oh, thanks. Perfect. So I'm going to sit down and ask these lovely people to just say their name and the things that they're working on right now.
But who are you?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm Anna Rose. I'm the co-artistic director of the company, and I produce all of the things that we do. All of the stuff and things. We're doing Abbey Fest tomorrow at the Den. Friday at the Den, 7:30. Come and check it out. And I wanted to do a show of hands actually before we get to these lovely people. Who in the audience is interested in being a producer or producing their own work? Just raise your hands. Okay. I'm just curious because maybe you're just here because your spouse is here, which is awesome too. Or you're here, you want to learn. So yeah. So let's move it on to Ross right here. Brief description of what you're working on, and then we'll get more into the dirty details.
Okay, I'll speak as quickly as possible.
You don't have to speak quickly. We got time.
Okay, then I won't. I am Rose Freeman. I am a recording artist, vocalist, opera composer, and I just recently got signed to Naxos America, which is awesome. And my current thing is I've got 2 operas I'm working on for premiere called The Great God Pan, and then the other one's called Lost Daughters. So.
I'm Rose Freeman. I'm just going to list it. So, just did Vic Mensa's set at Lollapalooza, some supernumerary work, and then I got Abbey Fest coming up at 12:30 on Sunday. That's our time slot, which God knows when it'll actually happen. And that's Interview with Freddie Mercury by Cassandra Rose. And
is that 12:30 at night?
12:30 in the daytime. Yes, yeah. So that always is a good thing. It'll be a staged reading. Derek just jumped on, God bless him.
2 days before.
Yeah, you can't do it together. And then we have the Fringe Festival. We're doing Filthy Habit, which is Fringe's first opera, which is very exciting. And then in October, I will be doing Dark Sisters by Nico Muley at the Prop Theater with an opera company I belong to called Third Eye Theater Ensemble. And then I'm participating in a self-produced project. I'm not the official producer on it. I'm the staging director and helping hands of, I always mispronounce it. It's Mozart's La Finta, help me out, Giardina?
Yes.
Thank you.
Giardino.
Thank you. Who's Giardina?
Giardina, yes.
Yeah, it's Giardina. It's because it's a lady. It is a lady.
Everything's
And it's my first foreign language opera, aside from that I'm not having people stripping, so I'm really excited about that.
I can't follow that. Well, language stuff. I'm James Rodriguez. I produce variety shows for different charities and nonprofits throughout Illinois. I'm actually a linguistics specialist, so I translate different Middle Eastern and African languages. That's what I do. We have a couple shows.
Oh yeah, you can't beat me at all.
No. We have a show coming up this fall called I've Had the Time of My Life, Songs from Screen to Stage. So we're taking songs that were written as theme songs, songs specifically written for movies, bringing them on stage. Then we'll do Around the World in 90 Minutes, and we're going to have performances from throughout. Right now we're looking at 22 different countries and languages. So we have that and a couple other ones coming on the spring.
My name is Derek. I'm currently working at the Greenhouse Theater Center. We're producing our first ever season ever, really. We've always been a rental house, so now we're venturing out and producing stuff. We just started our solo celebration season. It's 12 solo shows that we launched between June till February. We're at our halfway mark. We just launched our 6th one last night, actually, called Bloodshot. I am absolutely in love with the show. Everyone go see it. Greenhouse Theater Center. It's Bloodshot. It's British. It's a London murder mystery. It's fabulous. But my husband and I are branching out. We're starting our production company as well. It's going to be called Hairbrain Productions. Where we're going to focus on kind of crazy adaptations of classic work and histories and crazy stuff. And we got a show that we're working on right now that might find its way to Miss Anna Rose's hands. Hopefully pretty soon, I think. So yeah, that's what I do.
I'm Mary, and I'm a comedian, clown, actor person. So I kind of bounce between work with theater companies that are a little bit more offbeat, and then producing and starting my own production company. I don't actually remember because I'm horrible about remembering all the things I'm doing. Right now, it's the Church of Hip Hop, which is through my production company at the Playground Theater. It's going to be Saturdays, still in August at 10:30, and that is like a clown improv sketch show where Kim Kardashian comes to Chicago and opens up a church. Highly recommend you come. Let's see. I'm also working on a new show that I think will be produced by me. I'm not totally sure, or at least co-produced, and that's Muhe, which is a dual sketch comedy. That's going to be about two curvy women with Afro-Cuban backgrounds. Then I'm working on Gender Breakdown with Collaboration Theater and hashtag Reinvented Busker with Collaboration Theater, which are Gender Breakdown is a devised piece, and then hashtag Reinvented Busker is like a busking piece. I busk for 2 hours every Friday in the fall. Yeah, it's completely improvised, completely solo, and audience interaction, which is like my forte. Then, let's see. Ooh, Operatic.
He's like, and next week.
Like, it's just a lot of stuff.
Mary, you
coming
can
up
talk
fast.
faster.
Yeah, I can talk faster. Oh, the next thing Play Lab is gonna do is like a Bob Burgers variety. So that's gonna be a fun.
I would just like to say, can I go through my list now? Because I was just trying to keep this.
Yeah. We'll get there.
We'll get there.
Yeah. Well, so I'm really curious because I have an inception story about when I started producing and when I realized I wanted to produce. I failed the 3rd grade because I didn't know how to read or write, and they figured it out. And so I didn't have any friends, and so I was like, I'm gonna make some shows during recess. And so that was the first kind of time where I was like, I want to make shit happen. I want to be a producer. But I didn't realize it was a producer until much later. But I'm wondering if you guys have similar inception stories, and if you like share with us.
Like that, yeah.
Yeah.
I am not from either. I mean, as you can tell, I'm a theatrical person, obviously, but I'm not from a theater background, much more music. But my whole thing was I love doing opera, but opera bores the shit out of me. Anytime my friends here in Chicago ask me to come to anything that's been done by anything that's like the Magic Flute, I'm just like, no. I'm done. I lived that 20 years ago, and I'm no longer going back to that again, and I know what it's all like. So I was very much into avant-garde as far as performance ever since undergrad, and my professors absolutely would not let me do anything that was out of the norm. They always wanted me to do traditional things, and I couldn't stand it. So when I got into grad school, all of a sudden my professors were like completely 180, and they were like, oh, you're going to go tour. I toured a lot in grad school. I did a lot of stuff over in Europe and in Moscow and stuff like that. And they're like, yeah, when you get back, it's fine. Just do your homework. Don't worry about it. Anytime I had an idea, that's great. You should do that for a recital. Yeah, okay, great. So I did. So it was kind of like the start for me writing my own pieces and figuring out and producing my own performances and concerts. And I've done really well by it. My graduate teachers very much encouraged it. My undergrad school, I remember I went back a few years after I had started all this, and they were kind of like, oh, we heard what you've been doing. That's really good. Sweet, yeah, congratulations. I was like, thanks. Like, it pays to be weird after all. That's how I am.
Yeah. And we don't have to go in a particular order.
Well,
Just jump in.
mine was, I finished my undergrad in London in theater and marketing. When I was there, I was able to see it's a completely different situation when you're, a Midwestern boy and you go there and you get to see all these shows, you get to travel wherever you want. And I saw there was a lot of shows that were going on that were different than what I was used to. That I thought, well, that's different. Like stuff that I didn't realize was there, like more the fringe, avant-garde, offbeat. And I was like, oh well. And I learned early on. They said, if there's not a place for you, you put yourself there. And if you do something that competes with somebody else doing the same thing, you better have a better product than they do, because then it's a waste for everyone associated with you, which I've always agreed. You know, because we can always do shows and produce things that are very, I don't want to say self-flagellating, but a lot of times we do passion projects that mean a lot to us, but if we're trying to keep a company going, we need to make sure that we kind of balance and make sure that we can get people to see the shows. So then I kind of put theater on the back seat, went to grad school for international marketing, and then a few years back, several friends of mine were going through health situations, and I was like, wow, like, this was before GoFundMe. And I said, well, you know, what can I do to help raise money in a short amount of time? It's like, well, what about if I just put on shows using all the friends that I have? They get to pick what they want to sing, we have a theme, you work it out, you work with me, we'll put you on stage. And then everyone's kind of donating their time. So on that end, I had to come from a different part, because everyone that I've ever worked with for these shows, it's a zero commission, you make nothing on it. So it's really volunteer, which is a lot harder. But I think it's one of those, we were talking about branding. Once you get your brand, people know, okay, James and what I created, J Production, puts on these shows to help various charities.
Yeah.
It's once
That's what I love about you too, is that you work with like not just performers, but like normal people that want to perform.
Absolutely.
And you raise a shit ton of money.
Yeah.
How much money do you normally raise?
So we do like one night, 90-minute show. We do about $14,000, $15,000 for each show.
Nice.
And that we take none of that money to produce, so that we can actually say every dollar coming in goes straight to the cause. But it's with people, you know, people like Anna over here who, you know, you came to see it as an audience member, and then she was in our next show. That's the way it worked early on. Like, a lot of people just say, well, I saw the show, I liked what you did, I want to do something like that. I think we all have a connection, but putting people in the show, you come to me, you are, and I'm half Mexican, half Irish, you know, a cousin of mine that's 100% Mexican says, I want to sing this Marilyn Monroe song, and I'm not a white, blonde-haired, bodacious woman. What? Do it. My whole thing is, if you have talent, you have talent. If you can relay a message, you're going to be able to relay it no matter what you look like. But you have to get over the fact of what we look like at a certain point. Like, I think a lot of times we tend to, okay, well, that's different than me, or I don't know. I think, and that's why working with people that have never, you were in shows, we've had like 7-year-old kids, 8-year-old kids, 10-year-old kids, 50-year-old lawyers that come in and perform for the first time that only heard about it because they had seen the show. So we have a huge amount of people that see the show, come back and do it. But so that's how it came to be. There was just a need, and I said, because we all have friends and family that are affected by whether it's cancer, HIV, anything. And it's just saying, how can I use my friend's pool of talents to make money? And so
And they had to figure it out because I was just incessant. Turns out they sent it to the country I came from, the Dominican Republic, and it became a radio show. So I had my own radio show in a foreign country. Wow. It was really weird. I was like 6. Like 7. Yeah. And then my dad's a pastor, so I always had a venue. So I would start putting on puppet shows because I didn't ever want to sit for Sunday school. Like, my excuse for putting on shows and just being odd was like to get out of something. And that's pretty much what perpetuated my like high school career. I ran the costume shop, I ran most of the clubs, but I was never in class.
I was a similar personality. You have to have a lot of energy to be a producer. Like, you have to have like an endless well. Like, you just have to like always wake up and be like, it's like literally I went to bed at 4 o'clock in the morning today and got up for work and went to work at 9 and now I'm here. So, first of all, I'm sorry. But also, like, you do have to have that amount of energy where you just, because it just takes a lot, right? You are constantly in so many different places. And I had a very similar thing, like when you told the origin story, I was like, oh shit, that was what I was doing, sorry for my language. I cuss in a sailor. But yeah, it was like, I would have an idea, want to do something, and knew that no adult in their right mind would hire me to do it. So I just create an environment where I could do it. Like, I started a radio station in my high school because I found out that a club had $10,000 that they had to use for the technology thing, and I wanted a radio show. I just wanted to know what it said. I did it for like a month, and I was like, here, somebody else do it.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh, that's stupid. There we go.
Check that off the list. Start my
Exactly.
radio station.
Yeah, and I like wrote a play when I was 17, and I was like, what the hell am I gonna do with this play? No one's gonna produce it. I'm 17. It's probably bad. So I did it.
I was really painfully shy when I was in high school, so I didn't want to give an oral report. So I wrote a script. I made my class give it to me.
Exactly. I mean, and that show, like, we're 17, and it was successful because we were it was a small town. And I was like, look how cute that 17-year-old is. Making our own crap. And everyone was super supportive, but we were totally stealing set pieces from the local high school. Like, we broke in and stole the set. Straight up stole it. Like, we couldn't figure out how to we had like this moving car in the middle of the show, right? Because, you know, it's a small town, so you're raised on like off crappy Broadway crap. So you're like, well, it has to be giant. Because we had this giant car, and like we built it in a garage, and we realized it needs to be across town, and we have no way to get it there. So we just pushed it. But I still do that stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, when we did Alan, like I still.
Best. I like it. She's like, I still steal
I
things.
still-
She's still bringing it to high school.
Yeah, we bring it back.
Yeah.
But totally, like I still push things all the way across town. I have many memories in this town of taking entire shopping carts or sheets of glue on.
Because you gotta do what you gotta do when you're a producer.
Yeah.
Exactly, like that is your real job as a producer, is you just make it happen. Whatever it is, you Tim Gun it and you make it happen. That's your job.
Yeah.
That is and hopefully make some money for the company. Like that is all you're in charge of.
And I feel like that's the hardest part of it, that you have your idea of what the show is going to be as a producer. And then, of course, you know that first idea, everything is set. You know that's not the one that's going to work.
It's a totally adorable concept. Like,
yeah.
look at you go, thinking you got
You're like,
it.
remember that time that I thought this was going to happen, and that did not? Like, you always have to think of the next step, because no matter what, like we've had shows where cast members just don't show up that day.
Yeah.
You know, or they'll say, oh, I got tickets to go see, you know, the Bulls today. I'm not going to come to it. I'm like, but that's the hard part of, you know, as a producer,
Dealing with
what do you do?
volunteers.
Yeah, and that's the when you have the volunteers and they're not getting paid, you have to make sure that those volunteers really follow through on their work, because it's easy to stick with something when you're getting paid for it. It's much harder to stick with it when you're volunteering that time. And that's the part as a producer that you really have to balance, saying, well, I need them, but sometimes you know a friend of a friend that may not be the best person at following through, but they could be the best voice or the best actor. But then you have somebody that might be somebody that you can work with that you know will follow through. It's who do you know what I mean? Who do you choose? But you have to know that every single aspect has to have a plan B, C, and D.
And that release of control, right? Because theater performance is an inherently collaborative act, right? It's physically impossible to perform when it's just you. It's impossible.
Unless you're
like,
6-year-old in the Dominican Republic,
but even
apparently.
then, this is collaboration, because the parents
True.
sent it, right? The audience event, like the audience, I always refer to the
I
audience as
stole
the
things
final
from the
collaborator.
radio. My brother and sister were different characters.
Yeah, like it's an inherently collaborative. Like there's no way around it. And that's, in my personal opinion, is the difference between, especially with self-produced work or small produced work, the difference between a successful event or good art and really crappy art. And you can see it really fast is when the producer and when the participants are willing to let go of control. You know, I started producing as an adult because it was the same reason. Like I had a project that I really wanted to do and I knew no one would really let me do it. So I just did it.
Yeah.
I have a question about that. So, but finish your thought.
Well, it's just, you know, I did it because I wanted artistic control, right? And then I found out within about a week of assembling the team that the last thing I had was artistic control, right? And that's a good thing. Like, I often joke that becoming a staging director has been an exercise in teaching my ego how to go take a nap, right? It's been a complete 10-year exercise in learning how to set myself aside and allow all the other voices in the room to speak, because if you brought them into the room, you must think that they're intelligent or talented or at least willing. You should be the dumbest. If you're the leader, you should be the dumbest one in the room.
I'm curious what you guys have to say, because about producing, self-producing versus producing with a company, with a separate company. Because I do most of my producing through Nothing Without a Company, and I find that that's really beneficial because there's a lot of resources that a nonprofit has, but then there's times that I know that you guys decide to not go through a company. So what's your thought on finding a nonprofit theater company to do a piece through versus just fuck any other company, I want to do what I want and do it yourself.
Fucking, I'll just do it myself.
Yeah.
Well, I think to go along with like that collaborative side is that when you add another party in there right at the get-go, you have so many more voices and opinions, and you have to be okay with that. Like you really have to be okay with saying, okay, we're all in the room, let's kind of spitball ideas. And I think that that's the difference. You can choose to go away where you just do it all on your own, you can do your own thing, because then in your mind, you think, well, I really don't have to answer to a lot of people. But then you remember, all of these people from the cast, the crew, they're all collaborating with you. So you still have that. But I think the hard part is, if you have a distinct style and that company does not, there's going to be butting heads right off the bat. So I think people jump in and say, oh, well, I'm looking for a company. Oh, you're the first person I talk to. I always treat everything as a business transaction. And it's the theater and the business side of me saying, okay, if we're doing this together, what is this contract? What does it look like? What are your non-negotiables? Because somebody may say, well, I refuse to have, fight choreography in there, or I refuse to have this imagery in there. Somebody else can say, I don't like this. The problem is you need to make sure that your vision is going to match with the company. You can grow together, but you have to know who you're getting in bed with ultimately. Because if your vision is different than theirs, it's going to be destructive for everyone. And the people that suffer most are the cast and the crew. Because they're the ones that don't really see a lot of the behind the scenes stuff that as producers we go through. From you're trying to manage it.
Hopefully they don't see it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, they shouldn't see it.
They should, yeah.
If
you're doing your job
staff
right.
is-
Yeah.
But also sometimes it's just easier to cut out the fat, right? Like sometimes
Absolutely.
I used to run a lesbian art commune because I just wanted to hit every square on bingo. And we had a performance space in the house. It was like a rehearsal space, performance space. And sometimes we do collaborative ventures. Like you guys came in, like Nothing Without a Company, I guess me as well.
We did a
so I'm
24-hour with us.
Yeah. Sometimes we do collaborative ventures where we work with other producers and create work there, but the real reason we wanted it is because sometimes we just wanted to do an experiment, right? And it wasn't worth, yes, the project was valuable and we really wanted it to have success, but we didn't necessarily, or I didn't necessarily want to drag everybody through the mud to get it there. Like it didn't need to be that big. Like it was a simple experimental, one night only affair, and you just don't need all the accoutrements.
Yep.
Like having a company behind you is really luxurious in that like you have all of this support, but sometimes you don't need it.
Yeah.
I mean, and if you know what you're doing somewhat as a producer, those first couple of times are going to be rough, folks. You're going to learn a lot. But yeah, you still need it.
That's why I started my thing. Like my thing is comedy, sure, but there wasn't anyone doing clown the way I'm doing clown. There's not anyone that speaks to even my voice the way I want to speak to it, especially in comedy. Being a woman of color, being a woman who wants to move on stage, and being a woman of my shape, it was like everyone was saying no. And I figured it out. I don't know, 3 weeks into stepping into Second City as a building overall, I was like, oh no, I gotta make this stuff myself. Like it was so clear, but being able to step into that world, letting go, but realizing I still had some sort of control, it was kind of like picking and choosing the right.
Because you can't let go of your vision in the process.
No, because it's too strong. It actually haunts my dreams. I can't sleep if I don't produce this work. And sometimes it is really experimental, and I just have to try it and see if it works. And I just need an audience, and sometimes it's easier to put one together myself.
Yeah, I wanted to do an environmental opera in a living room. I had a living room. Let's go.
Exactly.
You know?
Did you have an Inception story that you want to share?
An Inception story? When did that far back?
Yeah.
Your conversation?
That was great.
Well, I got into producing in college.
I went to Columbia, and at the time, I don't know if it's still this way, but it had the largest musical theater student body. Yeah, whatever that means.
There was a lot of them.
There's a lot of musical theater students at Columbia, but they were only doing like 2 musicals a year. And so there were a lot of actors who weren't getting any work, who needed something to do besides just scene work in class. And so I didn't create the organization, but someone before me came along and created the Musical Theater Collective, and I kind of just latched onto it as a freshman, and it was like a student organization that just did its own work, basically, and we just did musicals. And I kind of treated it, eventually by the time I got to be a senior at college, I became the president of the organization, and so I kind of just treated it as if I was an artistic director of a company that was kind of associated with the school. And so I just kind of like barged my way into the theater department. It's like, okay, I'm going to use this space, you guys are going to give it to me, and they're like, okay, yeah, we're going to give it to you, sometimes.
That's a 50-50 shot every time you pull that shit.
And then sometimes you just kind of just take it.
Yeah.
Just take it.
Just take it.
Yeah, just take it. And it's like, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't realize anyone was in here. Sorry. But, yeah. And then I just like, I wanted to do shows, and I wanted to do shows that were not being done at Columbia at the time. And then I kind of realized that was producing what I was doing. One thing I absolutely love doing is assembling groups of artists together to work on a project. I absolutely love that, especially when I'm not the director of the project, because if I can just think of it and as an overarching thing and think about, oh, I want to bring in this director, and then I think of it as like creating a party, like what kind of fun party do we want, and what kind of host do we want at this party, and how, and all this other fun stuff. And that's how I came into it, and I absolutely love it. So.
That's a great way of thinking about producing, and I think a lot of, especially new producers, forget about the element of, which we also forgot about a little bit today, when the audience walks in and it hasn't started yet, what's the feel? Is there music? Is there a pre-performance? That kind of.
Yeah.
So that's ultimately like the hors d'oeuvre to like the meal.
Yeah.
Like if you set it up with nothing and then just force something on the audience, I think it's a little bit abrupt. Like I think that, in general, the vibe is always important too, because what you do before the show, during the show, and after the show is so important.
Yeah.
And I think we tend to forget, oh, fine, let's just leave it. It's good to go. The show's great. But you still have so much to do, even while the show's going on too. You know what I mean? There could be things that are happening, but after the show, it's so much more important too, because you can let that excitement kind of like ruin it for you, because you should enjoy it, but at the same time, you always have to learn something from it. Because if you do something, there should be a learning part to that to make you better for the next time. As an actor, as a producer, I think you should always get something out of it. But I think if you don't set up that vibe, that feeling, because you set it up with actors at auditions too.
Yeah.
If you say your auditions, we're gonna have auditions here at 8 o'clock, Tuesday morning, and then we decide to show up at noon, that automatically puts bad taste in the mouths of the performers that gave up that time specific to that. That's not the vibe you want to go for.
Well, you definitely just set the example.
Yeah,
that's the thing.
absolutely.
I mean, it was very hard for me. I actually think of all of us up here, I'm actually the one who's actually the most timid, which is kind of funny because I'm like, I used to be like very theatrical, and I'm like, I mean, I had to learn, especially when I was doing film producing and that stuff too, was like, I definitely had to have a very cool head and like decide what I was going to do, and be able to explain to everyone fully and make sure that they knew that they were appreciated, and also like set the tone for what was going to happen for the rest of the time I'm going to be working with these people. And especially when it comes to like even performances, I find it is very important, especially to set the tone. And I definitely, especially any of my pieces, when I prepare, I have to go up on stage. I have to talk about the story. Everything I have has a story, as I'm sure we all relate to that when we have our own projects that we're working on. And I have to go up there, and I have to be able to talk about those things, no matter how hard or how invasive it might be to myself or to the audience, so that they understand what they're going to be seeing and listening to. And that's something that's really super important. I think it is you are the team leader, even though you are encouraging collaboration you are still that leader that wants to say, like, listen, here's the boundaries I have, and here's what we got to work on and compromise with so that we can have a really good experience from this.
Do you remember when we are the 99% movement happened? And instead of leaders, they had behinders.
Yeah.
I kind of think of producers a lot of time, like really good producers
Yes.
are behinders.
We are pushing.
Yeah.
Oh, that's over there.
Herding cattle.
Yeah. I'm gonna say this, you're gonna say it back.
My particular style, like all of these parts are so integral to what I do, and I wasn't seeing it in comedy, that it was driving me up a wall. So I come from that theatrical background, but doing comedy, nobody thinks about the vibe. Comedians aren't about that whole life, and I'm a clown, so there's a lot of false starts to things and a lot of weird endings to things.
Well, further than that, like we're in the postmodernism,
Yeah.
right? Like
Absolutely.
we're here, guys. Like the definition of what is theater,
So over.
it's game over, guys. Like we're regurgitating things that are 500 years old. So that's an amazing thing as a producer, because that means that you can define what your performance is and what your art is and how you want to create that art.
Absolutely.
My
All I do
point
is
is-
that. I mean, I
Yes,
just call
and you
myself
can make that
leader.
party, right? Like that part. I've gone to parties, lots of great parties where I was like, no, this is theater.
Yes.
Oh my god.
Yes.
There's some moments that like the best theater I've ever seen that has happened in front of elevators.
Oh my
with people
gosh.
Fighting.
Yeah,
Oh my god,
I
what is
loved
it? Am I
it.
in the audience?
Yeah.
And I'm about
Can we
that.
call it non-consensual theater? Like, is it
I love it.
Like, that is
Non-consensual theater.
I love it.
That is where my
Hashtag
comedy comes
consensual
from.
theater.
That is where I love. Like, so a lot of the things I make are form but not form, because there's a lot of improv to it. There's a structure, an outline that we follow. Church of Hip Hop follows the church structure.
Yeah.
But I don't know, like this actor could trip and I could yell at him, and that's happened. I didn't want you to touch me, and I came to my show because you touched a ton of people. I was like, not about that. But the girl before you that did that, I made her do it. There's a lot of like real moments that can happen, and that's what I live for. And it's figuring out how to make those successful as a producer. That like totally makes me love that.
and you end up doing that kind of prioritizing thing. You're like,
Yes.
okay, these are the parts of this that are so important.
Yeah.
Let's talk about some realness for a second, because so I have a hard time as a producer confronting issues that are arising. So like if you're in the middle of production and you aren't having the same vision as the rest of your team, you know, a lot of people have the option to fire that person, but that's a really extreme thing.
Yeah.
So what are some things? I remember it was like just fire.
My favorite thing in the world is firing people.
I would normally try to work it out. So
We've hit that
Yeah,
point.
well,
What are
I'm the same way.
Well,
what are some
to
things
your,
that you would suggest to try
Well,
to like?
to your point though, I think that, you know, there are people that we work with, it being collaborative and everything, that might mess up, and you have to like, I always think it's a learning experience, because if I'm really collaborating with them, if they mess up, it's my job as the producer and as the person to help them so that they don't do that again. You know, like I think but I think if it's something where like completely like they're just not paying attention to the job that they have, that's one thing. But I think it's always a learning experience. I think that, you know, you have to have that conversation, because self-producing, you tend to, you know, automatically the first people you work with are the friends and people you know. So you've already had that relationship with them as friends. Then it becomes hard when it becomes, and it's a business. You know, if none of us wanted to make money for a product, you don't have to. But it also helps make it easier the next time you do it if you have funds available. But I think the hard part is having that relationship said, you're my friend, I'm your friend, but at a certain point, it's just like if I hired somebody to be a manager at a store or something, you have to have those boundaries, but you also have to have that communication. Because without that communication, you may be setting the wrong message out there, and they may be picking something else up. So when those things come up, I always feel it sucks sometimes when you're like, you know what, like it's just not working. Like we've tried everything, it's just not working. But you have to think, did you do this show just for that person to have this one thing, or is this a bigger picture? Because if that one entity is messing up the bigger picture,
Get them out of there.
you have to
Get 'em out
remove
of there.
them. But that's the hard part. But it's also you as the producer has to say, my name, my energy is going behind this.
Yeah.
And if your friend doesn't get that, and I speak to the friend thing because I think it's easy to just, if it's a stranger, somebody you've never met, it's easy to be like, bye Felicia. You know, it's so easy to do that.
We've had this conversation tonight over a couple brunches about that situation, and I did tell Anna, I was like, for me, I have many friends in the African community here and in New York and in LA, and being able to, a lot of times when I'm actually starting to have like a friendship, non-business related with those people, I do actually have to have a talk with all of them to say what my mantra is and how I deal with things, and how it's like, if you're ever gonna like audition for something, just be prepared sometimes for me to be like, no, you don't work for this role, or no, we're just not work together at all, or hey, you might like you might be really flaky during this project, and it's really gonna piss me off, so cut it the fuck out. Like it's being able to have that. For me, being able to establish that right away with anyone who I do have those friendships with, who also might be involved in projects. I mean, I just had this, like, we had like over 200 auditions for this Great God Pan opera that I wrote, and it was like, a lot of them were friends that I knew. They walk in, and they're like, hi Ross, I'm like, hi, and so I'm like, are we gonna go to George's for ice cream later? Yeah, that's okay. I said, okay, get ready to go. Like, that's it. That's our friend talk, and now you need to impress us. And sometimes people will get the roles, and I had a lot of friends that just say like, you didn't get anything. Like, it's not even personal. It's just you don't fit.
And if they take it personally, they're shitty friends.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. And then they're not really well built for the business, at least in this time being, so they can get thicker skin and realize that it's never going to be a personal thing. It's about the art. It's the importance of making art. And
you
can't have those in
put
the
them
way.
in there, right? Because you put
Exactly.
someone for failure, especially with opera, right? 'Cause it's all about
And your performers do represent you as a producer, but also as a creator and composer, and screenwriter, whatever, playwright, whatever. Like, it's whoever you pick, those are the people who represent you for this entire project, and that will reflect on you. And so you have to, from the very beginning of it, be willing to tell those people off, or be able to compliment and tell them how much you appreciate them. It's being able to like say like, hey guys, I cannot do this without you, but at the same time, remember that this would not exist if I hadn't started this. And so let's make sure we have this good energy back and forth. Remember, we are complimenting each other.
I always like to say that if you were panicking or in a really crappy situation as a creator, you have fucked up 6 months ago.
Yeah.
Something has happened 6 months ago, and you may not have known that you were fucking up 6 months ago, which every time I'm in that situation, I'm like, oh, past me, right? But you did something 6 months ago, right?
You didn't do anything 6 months ago.
Yeah.
Chances are you didn't do anything.
You weren't working on it.
Chances are what you were doing was getting stoned on your
Yeah.
couch.
That's a real, I just had to have real talks with a friend of mine where I kind of reverse engineer shows. I really want to work with people I love, my friends. Some of my friends are super talented. I want to make comedy with them because I find something very organic that's funny in them. So I had to talk to my friend who I had this other art form of not art form, but this other mission as a producer of collaborating with art forms from outside of comedy. Cool. So right now I'm working with hip hop artists. I already know that's a hard crowd to produce.
Yeah.
Like, I had to set myself up for success. I had to pick the right people, and even then, things messed up.
Yeah.
Like, you gotta tell them things 6 times, triple times, quadruple times.
And there's always such different, like when you're dealing with interdisciplinary, everybody has a different status quo and ethos of like what will happen. I don't know how many photographers that I've seen be like, I'm just not gonna do this show tonight. And the theater people in the room were horrified. Like, what do you mean you're just not going? Like, yeah, because you don't do that in theater, right? And it's just a very different status quo. And I've seen that with musicians a lot too, where they're like, no, I'm just not doing it.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, do you need to call somebody? No.
Well, that's the hard part, because when you work with people, even like outside of friends, you don't necessarily, it's just like any audition, you don't know their work ethic. There's nothing on that piece of paper that says, honestly, tell me, are you somebody who like waits the last minute to memorize? Are you somebody who is trying to figure out where you can put the lines on the set? You know, there's no way to do that. So you have to have blind faith sometimes But then you also have to realize if you don't solve that problem right away and finding out who you're working with, those are the problems that end up growing later that hit you in the face.
And we're saying this from we're saying this all from a position of like great comfort, where like we don't have to go out there tomorrow and have a set designer that's just not producing and not have the means, resources, or whatever to go find a new set designer, right? Because we're also, like, when you're producing events, you're on a time budget, and sometimes you're sitting there, and I'm always like, fire them, right? But, like, get them out of there, they're poisoning the environment. But at the same time, like, I say that, but sometimes I'm sitting there for a day being like, well, hold on, I can't, because if I fire them, then I gotta go find a new one, and I have no idea where I'm gonna find a new one, and like, and do I want to find a new one? They were supposed to be great. And there's that struggle too, because you're in a time crunch. It's like 2 weeks, and you normally don't find out that they suck until about a week before.
Yeah. When it's almost too late to find out that they
But like your
suck.
sound designer just doesn't show.
Yeah.
But that's also
Oh my
kind of
God.
the beauty of it, because
I say right in your contract that they owe you money if they screw
That's
up
a
that
real
bad.
thing.
That's what I do, people.
Yeah.
Really?
Do a no quit clause.
You're
25% of what I was going to pay you, and I don't like you anymore.
it's also kind of the beauty of it because we're in theater, so you know in a couple of weeks I don't have to work with this person anymore anyway.
Yeah.
So just kind of like just bite your tongue,
Yeah, that's a real thing.
be diplomatic about it, and just work as well as you can. And then 2 weeks when you're done working with each other, when they're gone, they're out the door, you're like, bye, never hiring you ever again. And so I know my friends never hire you as well. So good
You know,
luck.
I had to have a few party conversations though. I found.
You gotta process it.
Well, no, not even. Like, I found a couple of people who were like, I actually regret being a flake. And I'm like, well, that's too late now.
Yeah.
But these are the things we can work on in the future. And I also
Do you give them a second chance?
I always give people second
I
chances.
know, God bless you.
It depends on their skill set.
I
and
have
the
benefited from that, for the record.
There's two people I'm thinking of right now. One's a yes and one's a no.
Yeah, depends how
But like, how many of us have, like, when we were young, probably flaked out on
Oh,
something?
yeah.
because
I
of
have
that
shit
shit.
bad.
Flaked out.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
But like, so you kind of have to give people a benefit of doubt sometimes. when
Yeah,
that does happen.
absolutely.
Yeah.
You know, like,
Well, and it's a whole like learning experience thing, because if it's somebody who honestly you're not helping them become better, because I feel like me as a producer, I should be helping everyone in their role become better at what they do. And if I'm saying, okay, they're not getting this right, then I have to go, wait a minute, is it because I'm setting them up for success or failure? And if you need to realize, okay, what part of them flaking or failing is actually you. Because, and that's hard pill to swallow, saying everything is great, but then you realize, wait a minute, maybe it was this thing that I did that did that. So the hard part is to be open and understanding, but also to really go, you might be the problem in this equation.
A lot of times,
It
you are, right?
Yeah.
Like, I've totally been there a few times where I just looked at a poor designer being like, and like, I set you up for failure, and I'm sorry because I didn't have my shit together. And that's like the first job of the producer, I think, aside, even before curating, is like, you have to have your shit together. Like, you gotta know where that money is. You gotta know where everything's organized. Even if that money is $25, like, you gotta know where it is. You gotta know how your event's gonna roll. You gotta have your duckies quacking. Like,
and I think that's the hard part, and for those that have never produced or want to produce, I think, and like I said, I keep coming from like the business side. It's your business. It's your business. You know, we can put on these great shows, but if no one's there, can we do the next one? And secondary is you have to treat everyone as the employees. Everyone has a part. They have to know what that role is. That has to be a defined role, and that atmosphere has to be set up to begin with. Like, we're friends, but this is where this ends. You know, when you're on stage, you are a performer, and I think that we need to start. I think a lot of times, and I've seen friends that produce shows and things, and it just doesn't go well. For you know, any of us get sidelined, but be like, yeah, they didn't. But honestly, I think it's the common thread that I've seen is people don't realize, as much as they have the art and the heart for theater, is you need to treat it like a business, because people are getting paid. There are expectations, because not even people getting paid, you have to pay rent. You have to pay for these other aspects of it, and without that money, you can't do it. So if you're poor at handling your own money, chances are you're going to be poor at handling somebody else's money.
Sure. Yeah. So how do you feel about need to have a nonprofit to do that.
She's also a wizard at convincing people to hand her things.
Yeah,
It's
just,
networking.
Yeah.
Networking.
Yeah, just
make
good
anyone
at,
do anything.
I'm good at convincing people that they'll get something out of it, which I think people will. But how do you guys feel about putting your own money into things that you produce? And do you do that?
I do it all the time.
Yeah.
I
Depends on the project.
It
It
does.
really depends on the project.
And if you're not willing, in my thought, if you're not willing to invest in yourself, how can you possibly make somebody else who doesn't know you invest in you?
Right.
I think there's a
I'm kind of the opposite thinking. Yeah, it's like rule number one, never put your own money in the show. This is
I feel
how
that
I
way
always
too.
do it.
For artists, like
Yeah.
where we don't have money to put into.
Yeah,
But
I don't
that's
have money.
but that's different though. If you difference is
Have
not
a
having the
limit.
funds or having the funds
Yeah.
to. That's the
It depends on the
difference.
level of. I've never had to put my own money into a show that I was producing. I've been fortunate in that, but I've had to hit up some rich people for a show that I have done previously, and that worked out very well. So I always prefer to hit up the rich people that I know because they have the money, I ain't got the money. So that's just how I feel. Though I
And then
have
they're
put money in
technically
other
producers,
people's
too.
shows
That's the difference.
that have
yeah.
worked out well for me. So that works.
Well,
that's
and
good, too,
what
so.
what you just said is important.
Yeah, they're producers too.
Yeah, if somebody gives you money in
Yeah.
certain situations,
My mom's
that
produced,
means
like,
my
4
voice
shows.
is in there
The
too.
other
Yeah.
like executive producers.
Yeah.
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 I mean,
Hopefully in
that's
name
the
only.
legality.
Yes. Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
she came in and had an opinion, and I laughed at her, and like actually took 2 of those notes because they were valuable, and I got her on a motorcycle and sent her
And,
away.
but I think that's the hard part because it just comes down to, and like what we talked about was separate. Like if you don't have the extra funds to do something like that, that's one thing. But I always think if you're not willing to invest in yourself, you can't possibly sell yourself as a producer to anyone else.
I'm a big believer in having limits on that though, because
oh,
like,
absolutely,
I totally got
absolutely.
like a show is an animal, right? It's a machine and it doesn't like you. Like it's all the, it's like an alcoholic,
It's your
right?
greatest
all
enemy.
the things, like, and it will just keep consuming
Yeah.
until it is up, and then it will be dead, and you will be there, bro.
Yeah.
Like you're not gonna survive this, and that's okay.
Yeah.
But that means you have to have a limit, right? You have to be like, well, I'm only putting $500
Yeah.
of my own cash into this project.
I can fall into that pit hole really quickly. I super love props, and I
Yeah.
I
It's
play
a-
a lot of
Jackie
people
Chan.
when they're it, so I gotta
There's a
buy
reason
the
you gotta be
like,
budgets.
it's a real thing.
Well,
but
I'm totally
yeah,
willing to spend
yeah.
money, like $25 here and there for this, that, and the other. But I'm not like investing.
No, but this is saying any money, whatever. Because I mean, a
Yeah.
show you can put on a show
Yeah.
$100. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's
And
still
25, but that's still 25%
Yeah.
of what that budget is.
Yeah.
So if you throw in 2,500 instead,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? It's the same thing. But I think, but to your point, what you're saying though is, if you guys are selling yourselves as a brand in that sense, going to those people because they don't know what that end result is going to look like.
Yeah.
So they have to believe in you first. And that's the part of you have to make sure that you have a clear vision, expectations are there. Because the other thing too is if somebody gives you money and they think, oh, wait a minute, then I have every right to, or I want to put, it was like, what, 40 Second Street or something, like, I'm going to put my wife in this show. You know what I mean? Like, I'm putting this money in there. But that's the other
Oh,
thing.
so
But there, yeah.
Producer's girlfriend.
There you go.
Yeah, that's her.
But exactly.
Yeah.
But that's the hard part. But it just comes down to the $25 here and there.
Yeah.
But it's still you're still investing in yourself. Like that's the big picture. But you have to really know what your vision is to be able to sell it to anyone, an audience
Yeah.
or investors. Because if you can't get an audience there, you have no one giving you money to help keep this journey going.
And there's certain times where I don't put my own money in it, and I won't put my own money in it. And sometimes it's projects I really believe in, but like, it's just that arrangement can't happen, right? I ran, I was the production manager for a local dance company for about 2-3 years. And I was very, very careful through that entire time to never put my own money into it, right? I think I did once where I accidentally put the artistic director at the wrong venue. He had an interview across town, and I was like, get in the cab! And like, threw $40 at the driver and prayed that it happened, right? Because I screwed up. But I would never put my own money into that because also that was my main source of income, right? So there's a certain point where if you are actually making money as a producer, putting your own money or money outside of what your dictated reserves are means that you're never building wealth or eating lunch, right? Like it's just not going to happen. Because the profit margins in theatrical performance suck. It's all research and development. There is very little output of product. It's, especially with new work, which is chances are what you guys are doing. It's all research and development, which is where you result.
I'm really surprised at when an artist says like, "Oh, your work is done now" when a show opens.
That's adorable.
Because it's like, do you know what I need to do to get people to see the show, even if there is great reviews, and even if like I know a shit ton of people, like people are flaky. You need to follow up. And
The only one done on opening night is the staging director, and that's normally because they don't want the stage director coming back to fuck with shit. Like that's just the producer being like, please go home.
What kind of things do you do to get audience to come after you open or during the day that you're doing the show?
To get other performers or an audience?
Audience, yeah.
Well, for mine, it's putting on a show like in the proceeds, because ultimately it's the proceeds, 100% of the proceeds go to different charities. What I did differently, and actually you've seen it in Hana, like I started creating this thing where people were, because you're your own brand, like I keep going back to that, I would sell in spirit tickets. So there are so many people that said, oh man, I can't come to your show, but I would love to be there. Then I said, well, you can support it by buying an in-spirit ticket. And so that's...
We all need to steal these ideas. He makes money.
So for our last show, we had like 190 in-spirit tickets sold.
Whoa.
So because then you open up...
Air.
You know that space you can't build above the building in front of you? That space is the air rights.
It's not like you're
Empty chairs, you can aim, it's just open. It's just an open
You're
space.
like, you know, when a United play, like you buy your ticket, they're like, you want to buy miles?
Yes, exactly. You're like, sure, I'll do that. We don't know what that
Want
means.
air.
Yeah. But that's the whole thing. Like, and that's why you can reach out to those friends of yours that are out of state, that are out of the city. And you can even change if your ticket price costs $20-25, or I don't know what the range is. Say $20-25. You can either say same thing in spirit or half price, $10 for an in spirit ticket, because then people are more apt to go. You know what? That's about the same price as a ticket to the movies. But the whole thing is you're still selling yourself. But I thought, how do I make more money? You know, that's ultimately what it comes down to. So my mind is always like, okay, we made, for an hour and a half show, we made 10,000 this time. So the next show we put on, we made 11,000, so 12,000. So like our shows coming up, we're forecasting maybe 19 to 21 grand for a 90-minute show. But it's constantly selling those in-spirit tickets, but also really selling what your vision is. And it's the environment, because I can speak to these two, and Casey over there, my lovely fiance, is he gets to see all these things. You know how he's not involved in any sort of theatrical side of anything, so he's like. But yes, the main thing is for our shows is that we say that, you know, if you can't be there, still support us, because if somebody truly believes, because we talk about flaking, oh, I'll make it to your show, and then they don't show up. But it's like, man, I was counting on those 60 people. But the whole thing, well, if you can't, you know, do this. Or I wish you could tell me about the next one here and send a link. And what I do is I've always learned, and this is an easy business thing, 2 clicks away from everything. You should always be 2 clicks away from where the ticket sale is going to be. So if somebody says, hey, you know, Hannah, I want you to come to the show. Okay, well, send me something. I'm not going to send her the Facebook page that she has to go to and another page, and then she has to click on to buy. It's like, nope, bypass everything. The only important thing is for me, she clicks on that button, and then I get a notification saying we were paid. So it's making it accessible, because right now, we flip through our phones all the time. Our time is precious.
I'm like, what's the exposure rate now? It used to be 7. Where you had to be exposed to something 7 times in order to eat it.
Yeah.
Now, the marketing exposure rate is through the roof.
It's ridiculous.
It's so stupid.
But you think about this, how many articles have you actually read on Facebook or anything? You just read the byline. So you just have to start treating your theater and stuff as a byline. What is that one line that is going to get people's attention? Because guess what? I don't care what the stuff is underneath that. And I'm working with these charities. Most of the people will come to the show and be like, wait, which charity is this? They got there. And they're like, oh, because we just thought this would be interesting. So the byproduct is we sold you a ticket and that money goes to this charity. But they came there based on just that byline. You know, and it's huge, but it's on us to make it accessible and easy and think outside the box.
Are you doing your income generation exclusively through ticket sales and in spirit sales?
Through just that. We don't.
Really?
Yeah, we're not doing like
Is anybody
sign
in
auctions
this
or anything
line
else.
doing
like
any fundraising outside of that, like getting money in, like seed money through the front door?
to
we
get that.
do a
to
lot
get
of
that going.
Indiegogo.
I did something unintentionally.
Hey, spit it out.
Yeah,
I'm
because
better at
You
fundraising.
said
Yeah,
really
that's why I was-
shyly, like
I'm
I
gonna
did
get
something like
some info.
it's being recorded. Should you say that?
well, it's a church service and we passed an offering plate around and there's fake money in it. I never occurred to me anyone would put real money in it,
Yeah.
but they did.
Yeah.
Yes!
So I now fundraise during the show.
Mhm.
And now it's all going to PlayLab. Yeah, I'm going to start my first main account after these shows.
Save those dollars.
Well, swag and merch definitely helps too.
Yeah.
I've made a lot of albums and I have a lot of stuff on iTunes and I have download cards and CDs, and when I have a production, it doesn't matter if it's a classical production or if it's me doing singer-songwriter or performance art or whatever it is, I always have a table right by the exit door that no one can escape and have to look at. And I generally, every kind of show I have, I usually make about maybe 1 to 1.2K off of merchandise.
Wow.
Because they've seen the show, and let's face it, we still charge way too much for CDs, but we can. And you know, like, yeah, $15 is kind of steep, I think, nowadays. But
You're doing $15 a
I am.
CD?
But it's audio,
Yeah.
so it's a different medium.
Right. It also, and honestly, like, so my whole thing is like I have a business account. All that stuff goes back into that, goes into my projects. I do have the luck of, I do financially support my own projects, and for me, it has been a wonderful investment, and it also has been a big advantage to me as far as being seen and being heard. So, like, for example, like if we're talking about for the Great Guy Pan, we're talking about like how to be seen, how to be heard. For Twitter has been great for me because my byline for that was talking about all the demographics that I can reach within the opera. Was a steampunk horror novella about gender equality and trans awareness. And you know how many people have touched that like button from that? Like 20, 30 people. We're talking about Twitter, so I think that's kind of good. But like all that alone, and then having that was giving me the interest from the record company, which then I was like, you know what? I will invest my lower 5 figures into it, and because what that is that for me is investing in a hell of a lot of marketing and exposure internationally, and having a product that will be sold later on at whatever concerts are being done too. And let's face it, when you have those recordings, those are like huge promotional materials. Are you making a ton of money off recordings initially? No, but they're there for promotion. That's their purpose. If you hear a CD to go to a band at a live concert, that's where the money's being made.
But it ties in. The product ties into the other product.
Absolutely.
That's what's most important.
Yeah.
Exactly. Like your promotion has to tie into the actual piece that you're making, right? You have to think about when you're promoting a performance piece, it's like inviting people to a party, right? That's what you're doing. You're convincing people you want to go to a party. Arm wrestling them to the floor and being like, go to my party! You don't want to do that, right? Like, go to I always think of that scene in Weeds where she just, the friend starts yelling, be my friend, right? Like, producers, you get to a point sometimes when you're like strapped
See
for
my
cash.
show.
Yeah. and
See
you-
my show.
Like, now I hate you,
And
right?
people smell the desperateness.
Yeah.
People never look desperate. They can smell it off of you. It's like when a restaurant's about to fail.
Well, and the whole thing is think about like yourself in that situation. If you're a producer asking these questions, what are the ways that you would want somebody to approach you? That's what it comes down to. We
Why do
often
you
don't think
approach
of that
them?
way. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because what are your reasons for not going to somebody's show? Because then all you do is then you prepare that in your head, saying, okay, well they might say it this way, they might ask this question. You already have your answer in the back of your head as to how you're going to do that. But I think the most important thing is you have to think outside the box with everything, but also look at your demographic that is coming. Because if you're looking at a certain group of people that, let's say, I was doing a show and it was just like let's say like a comedy show, but my tie-in was, you know, opera CDs. Like we all know, okay, that doesn't go well. But then you have to figure out what does go well, what meshes. Because without it meshing, you're going to create that atmosphere. Because that stuff, most of the times, all the things are outside in the lobby while people, everyone underneath you to really be part of the team to go out there themselves. Because I cannot stand when people are in a show that don't promote it themselves. Because if you're not wanting to share an event,
for lack of better words, I hate to use the words, dissecting your production too to see what different demographics can be done. Is your production based on the book? Well, then go hit the author's page or the fans of the author's page. Like I said, things like gender equality or LGBT issues. Go to organizations or go to pages or social media in general to be able to talk about those things. And like, it's such an amazing thing to go to those people and make it such a personal thing with them, where then all of a sudden the interest is like, it can be huge. Like one of my operas is based on a book from this long lost author, and people had this like little cult page, and I went there and like all of a sudden they were like, we have to get this done in London, because a lot of them were from England, and I'm like, we have to get this done in London. So now I'm in talks with one opera and then get it done. So it's definitely being able to go to those little sects that your production can reach.
When we
and
did
being able
Sumeda's song, we went to the Egyptian communities.
Right.
It was an opera, and it's based off Khalif al-Hakim, who's like this famous playwright from Egypt who's quite dead. But like, you go find some Egyptians and you're like, I'm doing the adaptation of Song of Death by Hakim. They freak the fuck out.
So this has been really fun. We have about 30 minutes left, and I want to open it up to questions from our soon-to-be producers or current producers that are in the room. And I also want to point out the amazing moon in the background.
Oh wow!
It's beautiful, right? I mean, that's what happens when you come to Berger Park to Nothing Without Accompanying Panels. You
That was really nice. That was good.
amazing views,
Gorgeous.
pretty people, and then you
Gorgeous.
get questions that you didn't get asked. So I'm gonna open it up. So what kind of questions do we have?
What's the space I don't know about to rent?
Okay.
I need a venue.
I got it right now. I don't.
I'm not gonna lie, that is the hardest,
The venue's the nightmare.
worst part
Oh,
of
this
this
is
is
what
the
I
venue.
perfect.
Yes. So it's honestly there are companies you can actually get in touch with that will actually do like locale hunts and venue hunts for you. Again, it's money, but sometimes a lot of those businesses will actually negotiate with you prices because they know that most of us are broke. So they will actually try to work out something in order to make that happen. Now, I'm also a firm believer in completely cold emails and just really charming the pants off of someone. And that means if you have to go to that venue in person, don't even call ahead of time. You go there and just say, no, I just went past here. And be told why. Who knows? You know, like if I just went past here, I thought your venue looked really cool, and I was thinking about maybe possibly doing something we could talk. And if not, like I come another time if you want. So it's all about actually making it as personal as possible with the venue owners too, or runners, and being able to say I really like your space to try to do my project.
And get a tech guy. If you're not a tech guy, if you're not experienced, that is probably my one advantage as a producer, is that I understand the technical end of things and what it's going to actually cost pretty fast, because I stage manage for too long. But find someone, find your expert to drag along with you, because you might get hosed on the back end, right? There's all right, here. So Theater Wit is cheaper than Stage 773.
Of course.
But if
yes.
you rent from Theater Wit, you have to pay for any of the rental items that are in this space. You get nickeled and dimed really fast
And
once you
no
learn what you
advertising.
actually need. Yeah, and you can
And no
advertise.
And they let anyone into your space.
Yes.
Yeah. It's a lot of fun. But so then you're sitting there, right? And they're right next door to each other. It's the same location. They're both really nice. You see the number on the page in the contract. You're like, yeah, of course I'm going with Theater Wit. And then you're in tech and you're weeping in a corner because you just got completely screwed on something you'd assume was already there, right? And sometimes you have to understand negotiations on things. For example, Chopin Theater is an amazing space, but the only way you're getting a rental out of there more than a one-off, like a one night, is if you're one of the resident companies that have been there, or you find that magic time slot where they're both dark.
And
right?
you
So then
count
you're
them.
getting- Yeah, and you have to like show
You
up
have to
and hit on
match
Ziggy's
that.
wife, and then like go get him a beer, and somehow speak Polish, and like bring him a sandwich, and then you can get rented, and you're renting at full price, right? But you're not gonna win
And
that.
I think with when you think of venues though, you have to
Sorry.
remember, are you going to, because you may find some place that's super great, cheap and everything, but off somewhere far.
Yes.
You have to remember that the
Your
space,
audience.
you have to make sure the audience can get there.
Yeah.
And the second thing is, and this is the I keep saying business side, but the best thing to do across the board is every single theater company has a board of directors. Meet boards of directors. Those people are the ones giving money to that theater space. You will get above every other employee because they're the ones that are the deciding factors of everything. So it's the board of directors that are listed that those are the people you want to get to know. And it could be a friend of a friend or anything like that. It's about networking. But the board of directors, they have a say in it that if you just met with like somebody who works in the lobby or they're not going to have that much clout. The board of directors, they're there for a specific reason to keep that company going, that space. They're the big donors no matter what, especially in like a lot of the theaters in Chicago.
And you can also
Get to know them.
outside the box,
Yeah.
right? Like go into a bar, right? They might be really impressed. I don't know how many
Start
times.
small.
Yeah.
Start
Yeah.
small.
Go into a bar that's got an area in the back. Throw up some clip lights with some gels on it. You know, make it look nice.
Well, you hear about these, and
Or the Charnel House. If you're actually looking for a decent actual recommendation, the Charnel House is an old field home on Fullerton and Logan Square, and very nice
Yes.
and cheap and run by a drunk guy, so you can get a lot of stuff.
You actually
It's a real thing.
they're very and
The White House?
they are very open to having new things.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're great.
But you
Charnel
also
House
you also have to remember like
I
the
love
first show
those guys.
you do is probably going to be your smallest show in scale because you're trying to figure everything out. So that's the time you hear like you're saying like pop culture. You hear like whether it's Katy Perry, Lady Gaga, everyone they're doing these big stadiums, but they always say I had to try out my stuff at the small bar that there were only 3 people at. Look at where they are. All of these people, no one ever says they started out in the the
No.
Civic Opera. It's always they start out small because you have to figure out can you get an audience and how are you going to work as a producer
And you're gonna
try the errors and stuff
fuck it
at
up.
first.
Yeah, like you're gonna, like you are. Like I still screw up, and I've been doing this forever.
Yeah, the League.
Have it small.
The League of Chicago Theater also has a database
Yeah.
of lots of different locations. They don't have like random type locations that could be found, like the example of just walking into a place and checking out the space. Like I find that's really helpful. Also, Chicago Park District has a lot of different venues, and you guys don't know John Michael, but he actually is producing his second show in Chicago at the Den Theater.
Yeah,
And doing
I
a
told
fab
so.
job.
Thank you. I told them that they could change my space during the week of the run because I don't need a set. So.
Interesting.
So you're very flexible.
You guys, super.
That's pretty true.
Especially
Yeah.
when you can work on somebody else's space,
Yes, that's
they'll fit you in.
Well, that's a dream. So like when I moved here, Rich Toski let me do my shows off like American Buffalo and like Ghosts.
Yeah.
Like after their stuff.
That's awesome.
It's definitely. I mean, one of the things
So
I've
you understand the
really.
negotiation.
Yeah.
The drunk guy that owns the theater.
Remember, it's recorded.
We love you,
We'll
Rich.
take the compliment. Rich will take the compliment.
We love you, Rich.
One of the things I've had an amazing amount of luck on is unconventional spaces. Like we're talking about funeral homes, but like I mean, I even had an opera done on an oil rig, just like about maybe 2 miles
On a
from
boat
Manhattan.
rig?
Whoa.
Oil rig.
Damn.
That's
So yeah, so like
That's
we were
cool.
actually having boats take audience over for like a process of an hour and a half because like the boat's going to do like 8 to 10 people at a time.
Whoa.
But it's
Our
like
next show should be on the boat.
yes, it's, and audiences honestly they want something different, and a lot of audiences in general tend to think of like the normal settings as kind of stuffy nowadays. Doesn't matter if like you say you all come in shorts and shirts, doesn't make a difference. They still see it as that. So it's being able to do things quite out of the ordinary.
And that's a good selling point
Yeah.
too, though.
Yeah.
Because what makes your small black box different than the next small black
Yes.
box? If you say it's on an oil rig, you're gonna have those people that are
Yeah.
like it sounds like it could be, because all of us would be like, that sounds amazing, or super shit. Either way, I'm gonna go there and see what it's like.
But going for the opportunity. It's going to see that. I mean, we're gonna be in a crematorium for another premiere next year at Bohemian National Cemetery. And this place is gorgeous and it's hot as hell right now. So like, there's like 60 million fans in there. But it's like, it smells like
He's
fire.
asking a good question.
It smells like fire. It smells like fire. But you know what? Like that's just the one of the things. It's like I am okay with exposing my audience to those kind of things.
Yeah.
It's like why not? Like,
But you just have to find the audience that would appreciate it.
absolutely, absolutely. And being able to have something in such a beautiful space like that that doesn't normally have performances. People might walk in and they might smell the ash, but who cares? They're there. It's gorgeous. It's creepy. Yes.
I'm just a proponent of just having friends that have places. I've been incredibly lucky in just finding support in that kind of area. Not necessarily money, but people are willing to give free spaces for free.
Yeah.
So man, when you get those kind of opportunities, just milk it for all it's worth. And I just keep asking. Sometimes I'll just pretend like it's a joke. I'll be like, oh, you know, I do this and I perform. I'm looking for a venue and you own this space.
And that's your personality coming through there.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? You're
That's
selling
totally
the
how I
brand.
do
You-
it. And that's
absolutely.
my schmoozy first entry, and from there the conversation starts.
Well, you also got to take into account, like, not just audience experience, but capacity,
Yeah.
right? You could use the CATS model where you run forever, but it's only 60 people at a time, or 5 people at a time, or you can have something on a very large scale, but not as long. Right, there's options there, so that's also something that's really helpful in figuring out what your cost-benefit ratio is going to be, and what your per-seat cost is going to be, and also what kind of venue you want. Because that's where you're going to actually start determining those things, is how expensive that venue is.
That's a
Everything
great
else
question.
is flexible.
Yeah. What other questions we got? Spencer, I see you taking notes back there.
Yeah.
Would you like to ask a question?
I don't have any right now. I'm thinking of one though.
Okay.
So it sounds like a lot of you started producing your own work young, as children and that kind of thing. What kind of advice would you have for someone who's already been in the business in another realm, and what should they do if they're getting into producing for the first time?
I say it's never too late and dive in no matter what.
Yeah.
Well, you guys are cute. I say run. I hate producing. I'm probably the one person on this panel that's like, I do it because it has to happen. Like, or I do it because I just can't handle, like, the show's got to go up, or like everybody else who's doing it is just upsetting me, so I'm just going to do it myself.
I'm in the same
Right?
boat, too.
I
It has to
hate
get done.
producing, and I've been waiting this entire evening to say this. Like, I hate it.
It can definitely suck, but if it's a project that you really believe 110% in, well, let's say 1,000%. But I mean, then it's worth doing, because then you get to see the end product. But fortunately, as a producer, you have to go through this whole journey in order to get to that end product. And I mean, as someone who used to film produce all the time, I actually hate it. I actually don't do it anymore. I refuse to do it anymore. It's a sucky life, and it's just like it's 16, 18 hours minimum of your day. And
He's
so
talking about film.
film. I said film.
Film is the
so,
worst.
yes, not the same thing. But so there are definitely things that you have to make sure it's something that's kind of in there that you're going to want to do.
And I think the difference is, I started producing these later. I think the difference is when you're young, it's the whole thought. There's no fear. You don't worry about failing. But as an adult, you're like, your time's more valuable now than ever before. Because we can say you can invest money in yourself, but time is what you really have to invest, and you can't replenish that. You can replenish money, but you can't replenish time. So your priorities change early on, and as an adult, you're like, well, if you need, to have your job, you still need to have your job. If you need to have a relationship, like, how do you get those things to work? And so I think we, as adults now, just in general, we overanalyze the time that we had, whereas before we never really paid attention to time. Now you really have to focus on that and say, I am an adult and I do want this done, but how do I make it work? But the adult in you is throwing the negative things, saying why you shouldn't do it. So you kind of have to bypass that a little bit.
You might want to hire a better team.
I mean,
Right? And like seriously, because when you're young, you can, like you said, you have like this time, you can afford to screw up and kind of do everything yourself and not put the money into it. But I actually just worked on a project where the producer was in his mid-30s, And it was his first time out the gate. It was like his first time ever doing even a theater show.
Was it the bike play?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like that was his first time out the gate, and we were like, "This is gonna be a mess." But he hired a really good design team, and he hired some really, really intelligent, experienced veterans on the project, and he definitely let them drive the bus. He was like, "It's my first time out the gate," and that was really beneficial. Right? He figured that out, and he actually did. He's probably one of the best producers I've ever worked for, and that's saying a lot coming from me because I'm irritable as hell.
Let's say I was impressed as fuck by that program.
Yeah, everything he did was incredibly well thought out and thorough. But it was well thought out and thorough because he went and found somebody.
He probably started pre-production like at least a year in advance.
Exactly, which I think you should always do pre-production a year in advance. But he's like a natural producer. This guy's a natural, and I told him that. He was like, "I never want to do this again." I was like, "That's me too." I'm like the devil in his ear.
It's so interesting hearing you guys handle this.
Love this suck.
I'm definitely a self-producer. I would never produce for anybody else other than myself.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not super interested in putting up anybody else's show.
Yeah.
Unless it's in my style or in my voice or
If it
something
aligns with
about
what
it.
you would want.
Yeah, like if there's my artistic vision is then coupled with the producing side, and the producer is the adult in the whole marriage in my brain.
Yeah.
The artist is the child.
If it's not my work, if it's my work, I'm willing to sweat and die and run around and goose shit and mulberries. I don't care. If it's my vision, that's great. I'll do whatever it takes.
Yeah.
If it's somebody else's vision, I like roll in with like a chihuahua under my
I'm
hand.
too critical.
It's gotta be $1,000 to like look at somebody.
I'm so hard on my own shit, right? I'm so hard on myself. I'm just as hard on somebody. So somebody asked me to produce a film, right?
You've done film production.
I looked at it and I was looking at it and I was just like, you have to change the title. Like I'm sorry. Like you have to change it. And he refused to, and I'm like, that's all I needed. That was it. You can't do that. That was the test, sir. That was the test.
And honestly, like, what will make the people you work with melt if you can't do alcohol is food. Like,
That's true.
craft services, like being in film, like help me with whatever I produce now that's not film, because every time I lay a spread on the table, whether it's like opera or at the recording studio, whatever it is, people are like, "You got us food? This is awesome." They could honestly be like a box of vanilla wafers and a couple bags. I don't care. The fact that someone took someone like actually had the thought and the time to actually like do that for
We're
them.
gonna start doing that next too.
Yeah.
Yeah. All I say is
Yeah.
Especially
pumpkin
pizza.
bagels.
Yeah.
Promise people
Oh, yeah.
pizza. Actors will do anything.
Yeah. So I would say if you're interested in learning how to produce, I would say find because I personally am always looking for people that are interested in producing. Because
I knew you would know
no
your
Gotcha.
This was everyone's audition.
This was a snare trap.
So I would just like find a producer that you really like working with and saying like, hey, I would really love to be your assistant, like assistant produce with you.
Yeah.
I just want to learn like what it entails, and you might not get paid, but you'll.
And I learned something like not even the food thing because I don't really do the food thing that much. But I always have people over and have drinks at my place. Like let's just have drinks and relax. Actually, that's if you've seen we have just storage of all different sorts of alcohol. He's a great host. But so it's usually coming together. But that's the thing, you have to create a relationship. Like when we talked about working together for the first time, it was she came over and we just talked.
Yeah.
That was it. Because you can kind of get a feel of who somebody is based on that.
Yeah.
And I explained what the mission was and what the vision was. And I said, there's no pressure. If you don't want to do it, fine.
I was like, let me say.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like a first date. It's a first date. I just like to get liquored up first. Except if she doesn't drink, so
You gotta
This
wine
is a real
down.
thing. I will ask somebody to make their show before I ever ask them out. And it's always like in a shady corner where they did something weird. I was like, have you made a show before? Because you're really talented. Like, I always start that way. And I have to go run to a show that I said that's somebody too. So,
a show or a date? Because it's not like
It's a theater.
So
It's around theater people.
we've got
It's
10
really
more
All I
minutes,
do.
and Mary, feel free to go on your date if you need to.
She did say she did questionable things to raise funds earlier.
Everybody's got to do something like that.
No shame.
Not really.
Everything washes off with soap and water.
Yeah, so we just got like 9 more minutes. Spencer, do you have a question?
Yeah, I was wondering, you guys talked about producing your own stuff in terms of funding it yourselves, but you didn't really delve much into fundraising and the best ways to fundraise. And so I was wondering how you found to best fundraise within the community and outside the community that you're performing in.
Honestly, when I fundraised a huge show that I did a couple years ago, the best way to do it was like GoFundMe campaigns. Like the type of show that we were doing was about Toulouse, the track, the artist, and so luckily my husband and I know a couple of people through his business because he's a personal trainer who have money, who know other friends who have money, who know other friends who have money, and people who have money like things about art. So we just created this GoFundMe campaign, and the next thing I knew, all these rich people who had money, who like art and Toulouse the track, donated all this money, and I was like, oh my god. So just literally, that is the best way to do any fundraising I find these days.
Yeah, but if you do the online campaigns, you really gotta do your research.
Yes,
and
you gotta find the right one.
Yeah, and you gotta make a really good video, like really professional.
Yeah.
Something that people want to donate to, and you have to continue to update all of the people that are donating on a regular basis. Just look at other people's campaigns that are similar to what you want to raise money for, and just steal their ideas.
But I think it's harder now than like a year or two ago because we always see GoFundMe pages now for everything. So like on mine, I got rid of like you click on the right thing and it says click all GoFundMe showing, so I don't see anyone's GoFundMe things anymore because it was GoFundMe a thing for my tattoo and stuff like, and then I just turned it off, so now I don't see anyone's. But I think the hard part is now so many people are doing that for anything that you also really have to put that it's a legit thing. You have to have a product behind it. Because, I mean, after you see so many, I want to get a nipple piercing, pay this for me.
Yeah,
it's
like I'm not giving people money.
Yeah.
But
No, but I'm saying, but the hard part is when you're inundating
Real
people with GoFundMe things, that's the hard part.
There's
That's
donor
just-
fatigue, right? There's this thing that in nonprofit worlds, it's called donor fatigue, where you kind of wear them out on those techniques, right? And you also wear certain communities out because like you just suck them, you keep asking for money and you aren't giving them anything. So one thing is, it turns out there's these rich people that like to lose, right?
Yeah.
Go find, and it doesn't have to be a necessarily wealthy group, it helps. But go, like, whatever your project is, whatever that special interest is, go find those humans that are interested in that thing, right? Like Neil went to bike shops, and that's where he did his fundraising, and he went to aldermen's offices and engaged them that way, right? Like, he physically went to those places.
Which is the story in the fucking show.
Yeah.
So
he was like literally doing it, being like, hey, I'm doing this play, give me money. And they were like, okay. Like, you just kind of do it. But you do have to grease your palms a lot. Like, face-to-face interaction with a isolated community or with a community that isn't normally involved in theater, because we're always asking for money, we're a really bad resource, helps a lot.
Because then they also feel like they're a part of something that they aren't normally a part of.
It's exciting for them.
And give them that for that. And then they feel like they're a part of something that's going to go on to be something bigger and more exciting.
The entire board are a bunch of really nice ladies from Park Ridge that have nothing to do with opera. They're small business owners, and they are the best board I've ever seen in my life.
And I think it's you just have to look outside of your group, because if within your group you had somebody like that, you would be working with them already. You have to go outside of everyone that you've met up until this point. Treat them as great assets and networks to go beyond that. The hard part is a lot of people in the theater side are very timid to ask and to do those things, and so that's the hard part. But you have to remember, if you want to produce, that's somebody that has to have the business mentality, because you have to have a clear vision. If you're asking somebody for money, you have to say exactly what that is. So treat everyone that you know, go to the secondary and the tertiary level of who they know, because then you're going to people that you haven't reached yet, and donor fatigue. Like, Casey and I, we get mail every day of donate to this, donate to that, and you're just like, whoosh, whoosh. That's the GoFundMe things. you have to make it so that you actually have a presence with that person, because no one's going to really look at a link nowadays and just say, let's give money blindly.
Well,
Because
whether
you
we
find
like
out.
it or not, we're in a capitalist society,
Absolutely.
right? Which means that there's certain hierarchical structures that really help, like having a wealthy parent or having, I mean, it's just real, having a wealthy friend, right? Getting in those communities where the disposable income exists, and you don't even need to be wealthy. I'd say go for like upper middle class, right? We're some reachers, right? Where like it is a point of pride that you are donating to that, because it is a point of pride, right? Like you are climbing as a human being, contribute back.
And just go outside of the usual suspects. That's it.
Exactly, because chances are they're happy to be there.
Yeah.
One of the things that I've been able to do outside of like crowdsource, well, it's still a source of crowdsourcing, but one of the things that I think has been most successful for us has been being able to rely on the fact that everyone likes to pretend. Everyone likes to also interact. And so we have done, my husband writes murder mystery parties. So we've been able to actually get mansions for very little to almost no cost and run these murder mystery parties. And we have a little investment in that, but we get a ton of money back as a result of having these parties where it can either be like, you can pay for like maybe $70 to be part of, like be a character. Or you can pay anywhere between like 25 to 50 in order to be just like kind of a watcher in there.
Can I pause you for a second?
Yes.
Because I really want to get a group shot of all of us before
Okay.
Mary goes. So, Mike, would you mind taking a photo? Yeah,
Should we
let's
stand?
stand. Let's stand.
Is it like first day of school photo?
No, it's last day of school. We're all friends.
Oh, I like that.
We did the
Photo posing
Self-producing.
time.
so bad.
So cute. Adorable. Good color coordination.
Thank you. Peace out, Mary.
Yeah, right?
Great.
It happened last week too. It must be the
It must be the, yeah.
Cool. So we only have 3 minutes. So I just want to say thank you, Mary. Thank you, Derek. Thank you, James and Rose and Ross.
Thank you.
For sharing your knowledge of being a producer and what it takes. Because it really does take a lot. I think a few, maybe 8 or 9 years ago, I met a producer and I asked them, what does being a producer even mean? I don't understand. And they explained it to me similarly to what we just talked about. You do fucking everything. Anything that gets dropped, it's your responsibility to do. You deal with the money, you deal with the people. So I hope this this gave some great examples of what it actually takes, and also inspired you to maybe try it yourself. And it might also encourage you to try it and then realize that you don't like it. But it's all about trying, trying all that stuff out. And we talked about earlier, James and I, we talked about, faking it till you make it.
That's just like general.
That's just something that everyone, anywhere, even if you're not a producer, could benefit from doing, because the confidence that we have within us is not going to come out unless we allow it to.
Oh, wow.
Absolutely.
And there's
Yeah, I agree with that. I'm sorry.
She's like, I believe in that, but fire everyone.
Yeah. So thank you, audience that's been following, and thank you to the live audience. And
Cool, we had like 7
Wait,
viewers
I could have
out.
watched this in my underwear from home.
You could have,
You could have watched it.
but now you're in it. Now you're in it.
yeah. So thank you all so much, and we're out of time.
Text.
And hopefully we'll see you at the next panel and Abbey Fest this weekend.
Fuck yeah!